Hey, just a heads up that the following content may be disturbing or triggering for some listeners and is not appropriate for children. Please take care of yourself and others who may be listening with you. Welcome to the Bonus Babies Podcast, a show that has no easy answers, only hard questions.
One of the reasons why kids don't get help is because they don't learn how to trust again. Because when you're in abusive type situations, you lose trust in those people who are supposed to care about you. And if you're losing trust in your mother and your father and those people who are supposed to care about you, then you definitely don't trust the teacher. You definitely don't trust the counselor. But I'm telling you, teachers, counselors, therapists, and spiritual advisors, they are there to help you. They are not there to judge you. They want to move you from one place to another on your journey to healing. That's their role, and that's what they're there to do.
Can you tell me what you call the kids who you've cared for over the years?
We feel that the children that we receive coming into our home are bonuses. So we call them bonus babies.
I love that. This is your host, Jayne Amelia Larson, and I'm a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate volunteer for youth in foster care. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. In the same way a CASA works, I explore all things in the foster care maze by talking to kids, parents, caregivers, attorneys, social workers, therapists, really anybody and everybody who will speak to me to keep the conversation open and the information flowing about all things CASA.
Hi there, this is Jake Eberly, the producer of the Bonus Babies podcast, and today Jayne Amelia speaks with Ron Jenkins. Ron Jenkins lost his mom to cancer at the age of 2 years old. He and his siblings were then put into foster care, but then several of them were adopted by an old friend of their mother's from Alabama. But it was really not the best environment for Ron or his siblings. But he made it through, and he's had a life of advocacy for the past 30 years. And now, as he says it, he's probably at his happiest. Here's Ron Jenkins.
Hey, I'm here with Ron Jenkins. Hey, Ron, hello.
Good morning, Jane. How are you? And again, thank you for having me be a part of the Bonus Babies podcast.
Thank you, Ron. And I really want to hear your story, but I do want to ask you, how is Mexico? You just came back, right?
Mexico was absolutely amazing. I slept well, the food was delicious, and the entertainment was out of this world.
Okay. Wow, that's sounds like an advertisement for Mexico. Super.
I don't think Mexico needs an advertisement. Plenty of people there.
Yeah. Okay, so
Yes.
Ron, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where you're from? How are you raised? What's your family of origin?
Well, I was born in Los Angeles, California, April
Woohoo!
5th, April 5th, many years ago. I was born to Lula Mae Page, who passed away just 2 years after my birth. She died of cancer. And from there, I was forced to go into the foster care system. Me, two other brothers, and a sister. I went with my two brothers and my sister because she was older. She was fortunate enough to go into a different family situation, and we'll talk about why I say she was fortunate, in this program. And I bounced around foster care until about age 6 or 7, and then I was adopted by a lady who knew my mother from Alabama. They were both from Alabama, and they had met in Alabama. So they both moved to California. And when my mother passed away, this lady adopted me. She was friends with my mom. However, over the years, I've learned that this is not a lady that my mother would have wished to have her kids. And it makes sense.
Right. So did she adopt you and your other siblings or just you?
Well, there was four of us. She ended up adopting me, one older brother, and then another brother. I'm not sure if she adopted him, but he did live with us periodically. And then my oldest sister, she went to another adoptive or foster situation.
Did you have a chance to see them when you were growing up? The siblings who were not living with you. Did you think about them? Did you miss them or at all?
Going back to that age, I don't think I even knew they existed. I knew my brother existed because he was with me, the middle brother, he was with me. And then when I got older, the older brother started showing up. And then when I got even older than that, my oldest sister started showing up, which today she is my mother, backbone, best friend. I love her so much. My other two brothers are deceased, both dying tragically. And
Right, they were
yeah,
violent deaths, right?
yes, my oldest brother, he fell 3 stories to his death. He fell from the famous Cecil Hotel in downtown LA, where a lot of mysterious deaths take place.
Wow.
And then my other brother, he was shot in the head. Yes.
And was there ever a father in the picture for you? A biological father?
No, there was never a father figure. However, there were men who entered in and out of the life of my foster mom, and those relationships were very toxic, very aggressive, very abusive, both physically, verbally, and emotionally.
And how'd you feel about that foster mom? Or that she ended up being your adoptive mom, but how did you feel about her? How did she treat you?
Well, I'll just go back to the early stages of being adopted. I mean, I can say this now, but I didn't know it back then. But when when she was courting to adopt us through the foster care system, she would take us, to the grocery store, and she would buy us ice creams and cookies and sweets and chips, and she would tell us, "If you come live with me, this is how it's gonna be." And as a little 5, 6 year old, 7 year old kid, hey, cookies, chips, and ice creams are very important. So I guess we did tell the social worker that we wanted to be with her. Um, and that scenario of her manipulating us sort of set the tone for how the rest of this situation of dysfunction would turn out. Basically, she was adopting kids, me and my brothers, and other kids that came along down the road. And she was taking the money that she was getting from the welfare system, buying drugs to sell drugs. So if she was getting 1,200 from the welfare system, she would turn it into 2,400 or 3,200. There was nothing that we needed in terms of food or clothing, but there was no love, there was no nurturing, there was no motivation to be anything. There was no, did you do your homework? There was no consistent dinners. There was no consistent breakfasts. However, she cooked, but it wasn't a family environment. It was very dysfunctional. It was very aggressive. There was a lot of violence that took place in that house. Um,
And I remember you told me that she was out and out cruel to you, very violent with you. There was one time when you lost money that she had asked you to keep. You were a kid, right? And she's selling drugs and you lost the money.
yes. She would allow me to hold drug money. I was probably 10, 11, 12, and I would probably have maybe two or 300, $400 in my pocket. And her thing was that no one would expect a kid that age to have that much money on them. And yes, that's true. And I remember one time I lost probably 300 bucks. And she put me over the sink. She put a knife to my throat, and she told me she'd kill me. And it was a very traumatic experience for me. I can still see myself bent over backwards with my head in the sink, and her putting the knife to my throat that she was cutting up greens with. I can still see that day like it was yesterday.
Is she alive now? Have you had any contact with her as an adult?
No, she passed away probably 15 years ago.
Right. And when you left her home, was that it? Was it you were done?
Well, How I left that house was when I was 13, I wanted to give up on life. I was ready to take my life. I should not be here today. But I had been exposed to church by a lady who came to our foster home and picked us up and took us to church every Sunday. And when I was in that situation, I just prayed and called out to God and told God that this situation was not for me and I didn't want to be there, and that I wish He could do something to help me, come out of that situation. And 7 years later, God placed people in my life that helped me get there by providing support to me. There was a gentleman who lived across the street from me who became a father figure in my life after me and some friends shot out his front window. Instead of calling the police, he chose to become a mentor to me. And
Right. And what was his name? What was his name? And
his
what?
name
What?
his name was Harrell Burnett.
Yeah, Harrell Burnett. What? And
Yeah.
how did you end up meeting him? How?
Well, some friends and I were playing with a BB gun in my backyard. The BB gun went off and it shot out his front window. And when he came home from work, his wife sent him to my house, and he came to my house and he asked for me, and he said that I was going to pay for his window. And I told him, well, I didn't shoot your window out. And he said, well, you probably didn't do it, but you were with those guys who did it. So that makes you accountable for it as well. And he told me that the way I was going to pay the debt was to meet him at his house on Saturday mornings. I was going to work off that debt. He was a contractor. He was doing a job. He was building a bathroom, and he took me with him. And we got to this job site, and he told me that I needed to break down these walls because he was doing a bathroom remodel. And I looked at the walls and I felt like if I broke the walls down, the whole house would fall down. That was my mindset. Anyway, he left to go get supplies, and he said he needed that done when he got back. I ended up breaking down those two walls. I had the wood all stacked up to the side. When he got back, he said, good job. We continued on that job a couple of more weeks, and then the lady who owned the house came outside and she told him, Mr. Burnett, she said, I've known you a long time, and I know this young boy is not your son, but he looks like you. And Mr. Burnett looked at the lady and told her, this is my son. And from that moment on, I had a father figure in my life. I had someone who supported me in my endeavors, someone who looked out for me as a growing young man, someone to provide conversation that I had never had before because there was no stable man in the household that I was growing up in. And that's where I spent most of my time learning how to grow and change and to be somebody productive. Then from there, I began playing football in the 10th grade. He was the first person to ever come and see me play football. After 4 years, I was getting a football scholarship to Fresno State. He supported me in that. I remember an incident when I came home from school break. I was sitting on the couch and he said, he asked me some random question and I gave him an answer. And he said, I really didn't want to answer. I just wanted to see if you had something to say because before you left the college, you had nothing to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
When I look at you, Ron, you have such a lightness to your face. There's like a joyful radiance, and it's. I wish the audience could see it. I wish the listeners could see it. We're not recording video, unfortunately, so I'll get a picture from you and put it on socials and stuff. But you have an ease about you. Is that true, you think, only now because of all the work you've done on yourself? Or do you think that's your innate true self that was locked up a little bit, or I should say for a long time until you came to the other side?
Well, I'll tell you, I am at the most fun time of my life right now because I've discovered all these things that we've talked about, and not only have I discovered, but I've took steps to correct some of the things, about me as a person that has happened to me as it relates to the abuse situations that I've been in.
It's got to be really empowering, right? It's like to say, I'm fixing this.
You know what? I guess it would be empowering in that way if I've felt like there was a time when I didn't think I needed to fix something, but I've always been open to therapy. And that may be because my background in social work, because I studied it in college. It may be because of that, but I've always been open to therapy. But I just want to say that I've always been this kind of person. I'm a people person. I love people. I could go to the mall, sit in a chair, and just watch people pass by, and that's a great day for me. No, I'm serious. Now I go to the mall and I walk by people and I try to get in a conversation with me. I have one of my buddies that I work with, and he says, "Man, you can talk to anybody." He goes, "What do you say to these people?" I say, "Hello, hi, how are you doing?" But yeah, I choose to have this kind of demeanor. Um, because like I said, I love people. I love them even more now. I'm having a great time in life, and I have people in my life who love me and love me unconditionally, and they support me. My big sister is my world, and she is the kind of person that, she has good friends in her life, and I'm just at a point where I'm happy, and I just still want to give as much as I can. I can't see me leaving this earth without giving something back to the kids that I work with. And, we want so much for those kids to understand that we're not trying to tell you how to run your life. We're just trying to give you our life experiences that you don't make the mistakes that we made. And that's all I'm trying to do with my, coaching football. I don't even like football like I liked it when I was playing. And I'll just say this: when I was playing more for survival. Um, Football was my therapist. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Football was my therapist
Mm.
because it allowed me to exert energy, which, what do they say, that creates dopamine or something like that. Football was an outlet for me to escape all the abuse that I had experienced as a kid. It wasn't because I wanted to go to the NFL, because I've always wanted to work with kids. I did an article in junior college, and in that article, they asked me, what did I want to do to my life? I said, well, go play football or work with kids. And I got one of the two, and I'm extremely blessed. But football, yes, was survival for me. And I'll just share your story with you. Probably about 6 months ago, I was in my garage. I hope I can hold. I hope I can hold myself together on this one. I was in my garage, and I was looking through some boxes, and I came up with um, some awards that I had won while I was a college athlete. And for the first time, those awards meant something to me because during that time, I was so broken from life that I didn't even enjoy the good things that was taking place in my life because of all the abuses that I had already experienced. So I was out on the football field making plays, and the crowd was yelling and cheering. I heard none of it. I heard none of it. I was so focused on surviving and trying to make something out of my life that I didn't even enjoy it at that time. As a matter of fact, the guy who recruited me to attend Fresno State, he's like a father and a friend to me to this day. He offered me a scholarship, and I told him, um, don't give it to me, give it to a friend of mine, Ted Green, who I felt like was a better athlete than me. He was a better student than me, and I felt like he deserved it more than me. But this guy told me, no, I'm going to give the scholarship to you. And I took that scholarship, and it was another way of God putting me in a situation that would sustain me throughout the rest of my life. And I'm just grateful today that, I mean, it was, yes, it's 30 years later that I looked at those awards and I got to experience the joy that I had. I'm not even sure if I would have enjoyed it back then, it would have meant, so much. But today it means so much more to me than it did back then because of the struggles that I was going through. And I just want to recall a situation. My first college game, I was out on the field. They threw a pass to me. I caught it. It was a great catch. The crowd went wow, and I stood up and I had to run off the field because I was in tears. Nobody knew I was in tears. I ran off the field. I was standing on the sideline, and I'm just bawling. I'm just crying. And I thought to myself, I said, "Why are you crying?" And it was the first time. It was the first time in my life that I had an emotional connection with my mother, and that passed away when I was 2 years old. I felt that she was proud of me at that moment. And before that, I didn't think of her much, but after that, I think of her all the time. So that was an awesome, awesome emotional moment, that occurred. But other than that, it was a struggle. It was survival. It was mental health. It was getting me to the next day, getting me to the next hour. And I'm so appreciative that God allowed me to be in that situation. Um, he knew I wouldn't go get a therapist because I didn't have a mom that would get me a therapist. He knew that I wouldn't sign up for a therapist because I didn't know I needed one. But having football as an outlet, it was physical and it was everything that I needed. But I'll tell you what, um, the hits that I took in football were nothing close to the hits that I took as a young kid being physically and sexually abused and having my foster mother put a knife to my throat and tell me she'd kill me. There was no hit in football that was worse than those situations in terms of who I am today as a man.
All right. I want to go back a little bit to what happened to you when you were a kid, when you were 10 years old, because that's what led in part to how you felt as an 11, 12, 13-year-old. Can you talk about
Yeah.
that with me?
Yes, when I was 10 years old, I had a babysitter who would come and babysit me when my foster mother left home. And it would just be me and this young 15-year-old girl. And she took it upon herself to sexually abuse me several times. It started out as just regular play, and then it led to her asking me to get on top of her, and this occurred many times over. I had no idea what was going on. I just remember the verbiage: "Get on top of me, put it in, move your body," those kind of things, and these things happen, and it ended up happening again in this same household by another lady. I think I probably was 11 or 12, and there was a party that took place, and I went to bed at night, and the next thing you know, this 20 something year old lady ends up in my bed, and the same conversation that was used by the 15-year-old girl was used by the 20-year-old girl: "Get on top of me, put it in." And I just remember waking up the next day laying on her chest, and um, that situation was kind of over, and never thought about it anymore until I became well into my adult life and had realized, because my college did an article on me that talked about my life and the many things that I had went through. And I looked at this article, and for the first time, I saw myself in terms of who I really was. This was pivotal because I had been through two divorces. I was married once for 3 years to my son's mom. We divorced, and then I remarried, and then I was married 9 years. And I'm not saying that those things that happened to me contributed to the divorce, because I felt like I was a good person. I felt like I did things right. I felt like I respected my wives. But in looking at the abuse situations and looking at the relationship that I had with my foster mom, I had to ask myself, what role did those situations play in your life as a man in terms of how you were in relationships as a woman? So here I have two sexual abuses at a young age. And then I have this relationship with the foster mom who was very aggressive and abusive physically towards me as well. and I had to find some answers. I couldn't look to those relationships or look to those people and say it was their fault. I wasn't concerned about that. I was concerned about fixing myself, because those people had moved on in their life and they're doing whatever they're doing. So that wasn't my concern. My concern was me and where I was. So I got into therapy, and I found out some things about myself. And just to make it simple, was that yes, I was in these relationships, but was I 100% present in those relationships on an emotional level? Was I 100% present in those relationships on a physical level? Meaning, when you're abused as a child and you enter into intimate relationships with women, you still have some of those things that took place during that abuse going on, whether you know it or not. That's the traumatic part of abuse. You may think that you're present, you may think that you're 100% into this situation, but when you're abused, you put up some walls and you learn how to suffocate feelings, or you learn how to hold back in certain ways. And just to explain it, I had a wall up from here that wouldn't reach here.
Like 2 feet in front of you that couldn't reach your heart.
Right.
Right. And
2 feet in front of me, yes.
so this is something you started to think about after your failed marriages, and you went into therapy and you thought about, what kind of man am I? But at that same time, were you starting to remember all the violence in the home? Like the time that the home was surrounded by Dobermans, you told me, and a man put a gun to your baby sister's head? Like, did that stuff come up then? And can you tell me about that too?
Yes. After this article was done by a great writer in Eddie Huge for Fresno State magazine, I looked at this article and I read through it. And instead of me saying, "Wow, look at your life," I said, "Wow, something's wrong. What's wrong with you? You need to fix these things." And because I majored in social work in college, I knew the resource. I knew that I had to go into therapy and try to figure out, how do these situations emotionally impact me as a man, as a person, as a friend, as a husband, as a boyfriend. Because I knew that throughout my life, I've always been a good person, but yes, I struggled with having the confidence that I needed to be in relationships. And I can remember when people would tell me, "Oh my God, you're so confident." And I would be thinking to myself, "Oh man, you just don't even know. Like, I'm good. I'm good putting up this facade, of protecting myself because of all these things that had happened to me." And I just really tried to dig down deep and find out what was the source of my insecurities, what was the source of my lack of confidence. And therapy taught me so much about that.
Right. So did you see the therapy as work, or did you see it as freeing, or what? Like, can you track back and talk to me about that? Like, how did you feel about what you're doing?
Well, a part of it was freedom, but a part of it was work, because I had to really dig down deep and talk about some things that had happened to me that weren't comfortable. I wouldn't be able to talk to you today as openly if as I am, had not I went to therapy. And I'm talking about MDR therapy. Not just regular conversational therapy, but MDR, where you have to go back and actually talk about these events, talk about what you felt, place yourself back in these uncomfortable situations, revisit those emotions, revisit those moments, and to the point where you're flowing in tears and it almost feel like these things are occurring again. But you have to go back and you have to touch these things again in order to get them out and really talk about them. And then the therapist helps you figure out the feelings and why you have those kind of feelings, and how they affect you today, and what changes you need to make, giving you little exercises or things to do now to create a new you, because the old you is stuck, in these things that hasn't allowed you to grow emotionally, that hasn't allowed you to love fully, but more importantly, what hasn't allowed you to be loved fully, to be loved fully, and to give love. When you're in a relationship, you can say, yes, I love this person, or you can say, this person loved me. But is that really true when you've gone through abuse of any kind, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional? These things put up barriers. And if you don't get into therapy or find some resources to help you deal with those emotions, then you could become stuck the rest of your life in those areas.
You know, Ron, I think actually that's true for many, many people. That is what happens, whether
Mm.
they wanted to or not. They might want to get to the other side of it, but they are not able to, either because they don't seek help or because they don't know there's help out there, or they don't have faith that they can be helped, and they end up not living their true selves.
I think the biggest reason is because people don't think they need help.
Mm.
They think they're okay. They think that the outburst of negative energy that they have is a protection that they need. No, there's something deeply rooted going on, and it needs to be dealt with. And this is why a lot of young men and women end up incarcerated, because they have these deep rooted emotions that they haven't solved in their mind and in their spirit and in their body. And sometimes it comes out as violence. It comes out as stabbing somebody. It comes out as shooting somebody. It comes out as assaulting somebody. In relationships, in marriages, emotions run really high. And if you're full of negative emotions from trauma, then you could be in a situation where all of this stuff comes out at one time, and you could do something that you would regret for the rest of your life, that could cause you to be incarcerated, or you'll kill somebody, or somebody will end up killing you. It's imperative that we understand where we are in our lives emotionally, and that we seek help through resources in our communities, whether it's through our church or our schools, or therapeutic programs that are in our communities.
Right. So I'm glad that you're talking about this now. So tell me about how you got involved with working with kids in juvenile justice. How did you arrive at that place?
Well, when I got to college, they said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I thought back to my childhood. I thought about being a foster kid, and I thought about the social workers that I had dealt with in my past, some good, some not so good. One in particular, the social worker that was at my house on Friday nights getting drunk with my mother, which is probably the same lady who approved the adoption paperwork, who probably was in on the drug money. I can't say that for sure, but I can only assume that. Why would your social worker be at your house on Friday night getting drunk with your foster mom? But anyway, I got to college and I decided that I wanted to help kids, aside from play sports, which is what got me to college. I had two goals. One was to, by the grace of God, make it to the NFL, and the other one was to help kids. I didn't make it to the NFL, but God gave me my second one, and He allowed me to work with kids. And I have been fulfilled for over 35 years, being in the presence of young kids, both boys and girls, who have gone through situations like mine, sharing my story, something that these agencies don't really allow you to do or like you to do. Sharing my story, gaining instant respect in my story, and letting them know, hey, I've walked the same streets you walked. I've walked the same pain you walked. I've walked in those same circles. Let's do something about this. Let's talk about this. And it's been extremely effective. I had one young lady I work with. She was a runaway who had been forced into human trafficking. I worked with her for 3 long years. 3 years after I left that job, she found me and nominated me as the person to save her life. Her name is Carissa Phelps. She's an anti human trafficking attorney in Florida. She graduated from UCLA Business Law School after she graduated from Fresno State, the same university that I graduated from. And she's doing amazing things. And that relationship right there validates where my heart was, where my desire was, and what I set out to do as a social worker. I did end up in social work because I did an internship with Fresno County Probation Department, and for some reason I love that environment because I had brothers who had went to jail. I had brothers who were in gangs. I had brothers who dealt with the same situations that these kids had dealt with. I had a total of four brothers killed before I was 23 years old. And each one of these situations, it was either directly related to the use of drugs or drugs played a role in it, whether it was possession or sales. And this is because of the environment that I grew up in that facilitated drugs as an okay activity. When you grow up in a home and the person that's supposed to be caring for you and loving you the most is selling drugs, then a part of you think that that's okay. And you're going to do one of two things. You either become a dealer or become a user. Unfortunately, my brothers became users, and unfortunately, when they died, there was signs of PCP in their systems.
Has there ever been a kid who you could not get through to, who you worked with? I can imagine that you got through to every kid, that you changed every kid's life for the better, but that can't be true. I mean, it's just not humanly possible, right?
You're exactly right. But I had a goal. I had four brothers killed, and instead of getting revenge, because that's what they normally do, if you kill my brother, then I go out and kill your brother. My goal was to avenge their deaths, not get revenge, but avenge. So there's one kid that I work with at Fresno County Juvenile Hall, and this kid was really bad, but I chose to work with him, and he just wouldn't respond. He ended up doing something really bad, and he got sent to prison. And still to this day, that was 35 years ago. Still to this day, I think of the final exchange I had with this kid in the day room. We were arguing, and he was threatening me, and I had to write him up. And then he assaulted somebody, and then he was sent to state prison. I could still see this kid at 16 years old thinking, what can I do for this kid? But he made choices that wasn't conducive to me helping him or him helping himself, and he went to state prison. And that sticks in my mind more than anything because he was a good kid. He just had some emotional problems that he couldn't figure out on his own and didn't want to let anybody help him figure those things out. Which brings me to the thought process. If you're having emotional problems, if you're finding yourself always in arguments with staff, with teachers, with your parents, with your mom, with those people who care about you, there's some things going on with you, and you need to seek help. You need to seek therapy because in the long run, those things are going to get the best of you. You're going to harm somebody, or you're going to do something that you regret the rest of your life.
Well, you say that, and of course that's ideal. If a kid who's feeling pain acting out says, "I'm in trouble, I need help," and then can get the help, that's great. But as you said earlier, that's so often not what happens. Either they say, "There's nothing wrong with me, nothing wrong with me. It's the world that's all messed up. I'm fine," and then they just continue doing what they're doing, and they end up just going downhill and ruining their lives. And that happens every day.
You're you're exactly right, and that's why I'm here to say there are people who care about you. They're therapists, they're teachers, they're family members, and you have to seek help. You have to have a voice. You have to understand that you're in control of what happens to you, and you need to voice things that are going on with you. But at the same time, you have to trust. You have to embrace. You have to embrace your teachers. You have to embrace your therapists. You have to embrace your counselors. You have to embrace your spiritual leaders. And you have to give these people a chance to help you. If you don't, then you're going to just stay where you are. And I think one of the reasons why kids don't get help is because they don't learn how to trust again. Because When you're in abusive type situations, you lose trust in those people who are supposed to care about you. And if you're losing trust in your mother and your father and those people who are supposed to care about you, then you definitely don't trust a teacher. You definitely don't trust a counselor. But I'm telling you, teachers, counselors, therapists, and spiritual advisors, they are there to help you. They are not there to judge you. They want to move you from one place to another on your journey to healing. That's their role, and that's what they're there to do.
I remember you told me that the reason why you wanted to do this podcast is so that you could get through to one kid who might hear it, to make that kid's life just a little bit better.
Yes, you're exactly right. Who better to talk about foster kids than a person who's been through that situation? Who better to speak to a foster kid that's listening to say, hey, I was you, I was in your shoes, I was in your situation, I was hurt, I was emotionally broke. But I need to tell you that you can get help, you can change, your life can be great, but it starts with you making that decision and trusting someone. Yes, I wanted to do this podcast because I wanted to again share my story in spaces and places that I cannot walk in and talk in. But for people to listen to my story and say, hey, if this guy could do it, I can do it. Two sexual abuses, four brothers killed before the age of 23. Today, I am a retired correctional officer counselor by the state of California. I am living an awesome life. I'm a football coach. I'm still active in the lives of young men. It's what I am on this earth to do. And we are here to take our pain and make it pleasure for someone else who are on their way going through what we've gone through, or are going through what we've gone through. That is our mission. Healing ourselves is healing others.
And you're also an Ed rights holder. So tell me about that. How did you end up doing that?
A good friend of mine, Paul Freeze, he's very involved with helping youth, and he suggested I become an education rights holder. And I was like, oh, what is that? And he said, well, you have these kids who have been displaced from their homes and they're in foster care system or group home situations, and they just need somebody to be a springboard between all the other negative things that's going on in their life. The relationship with the parents has failed. The relationship with the group home is tough. The relationship with the foster parents is tough. And as an education rights holder, I'm someone who is unbiased about anything that the kid has gone through. All I care about is the kid progressing in his educational journey. And basically, what that means is I go in, I meet with the kid to see if we're a fit, have a conversation with them, let them know, talk about my story. Yes, I do talk about my story. And I let them know, hey, I know where you're at. I'm here for you. This relationship can be one that grows us, as one in terms of your success in school and your success personally. And what I like to do is I have an old fashioned approach. It's like, I want to be your friend. I want to be somebody you can talk to. And if you allow it, if you want to do some community activities like go to ball games, football games, you want to go down to the park and shoot baskets, you want to go to the beach, we can do all those things. But our main goal is to focus on your educational progress. And those things are incentives to that. If you're showing progress with your educational goals, then yes, those community things are available, because life is a give and take. It's not all taking. As kids, we think that it's all taking. No, it's a give and take. You do good in school, you improve on your homework, then yes, we can go to a Dodger game. You get an A on your paper, then yes, let's go have a hamburger at your favorite restaurant. Those are all things that I like to do. I had a kid who totally was not motivated in nothing. He didn't like Dodgers. He didn't like the Rams. He didn't like the Raiders. He didn't like nothing. He just liked video games. And I said, okay, that's fine. That's the incentive. You meet with me. We take care of business. Then you get video games. You can buy your video games, you can watch video games, however it looks to you. I don't care, just as long as you're progressing in your education journey. I chose to do that because I remember when I was in school and I was young and in kindergarten, I was in special education. We did our little thing in the back while the regular students was there. And there was a lady, a little black lady. Her name was Miss Davis. She wasn't very big, but her voice was very big. And Miss Davis was very pivotal in my educational journey. And I'm just going to give you one example. We were going on a field trip one day, and I was getting on the bus. And Miss Davis put me to the side. She whispered in my ear. She said, well, she put me down to her and whispered in my ear. She said, Mr. Jenkins, she said, if you cut your hair, these kids will stop bothering you. And I said, okay. I went home and I told my foster mother, I said, I need a haircut. My foster mother got me a haircut. I came back to school. The kids stopped bothering me. Obviously, I had this hair that didn't fit into the culture, and kids were picking on me. They were throwing stuff at me. They were making fun of me, and it was causing problems in my life. She saw that one situation, and she knew how to solve it, and she gave me the answers to it. And I trusted her, and I listened to her, and I got my haircut. And it was a problem that was solved immediately. Another situation, a guy named Sam Watson. He was the after school coordinator at my elementary school. He recognized that I wasn't as good as the other kids in sports and things like that, but he encouraged me to participate, and he gave me positives based on my level, not everybody else's. I had a young friend that I used to run with. His name was Ernesto, and he called us the Lone Ranger and Tonto. And he don't know what that did to me, because when he called me the Lone Ranger, for those of you who don't know the Lone Ranger, he was a guy on a horse who did good deeds in cowboy land. And I was a Lone Ranger. And that continued with me throughout my life. And I thank Sam for recognizing me and even giving me a title, because before that I was just a foster kid in a scary world, you know.
Right. So that ended up being like the theme of your life, right?
That that was the theme of my life. You're exactly right. And it's funny, I seen this gentleman probably 3 years ago at an event where I was doing some photography, and I called him over and I said, hey Sam, I remember you. Man, you called me the Lone Ranger and you called my friend Tano. And he's looking at me like, what? And I go, yeah. I go, I want to thank you, man. I go, because I was in foster care. I had no vision, nowhere to go, and you gave me something to hold on to, and I'm successful today because of that, you know. So it was great to see him again, and he doesn't know how much I appreciate him for doing that. He had no idea the things that I had gone through, but yet he was there in his position, which is what I tried to be when I became a therapist and a counselor, um, and an officer. I tried to play that role 100%, you know, because I knew that kids were looking to me for answers, and I had to have the answers for those kids in order to change their life or change their thinking or do something different with them. Yes. Amazing.
Okay, I want to ask you one last question that I ask all my guests, and I want you to dig deep for this, and that is, what is the one thing that no one would ever know about you unless you told them?
No, I would have to go deeper than that. I mean, in talking about my story and talking about the things that I've overcome in terms of healing and the things that happened to me as a kid, I think the one thing that somebody would not know about me is how sorry I am to my first wife, my son's mom, for not being available for her on an emotional level, not being able to voice these things that had happened to me, so there could be some more understanding, or maybe we would have sought counseling, or maybe we would have sought help. But just to be sorry to her, because she was a good person, she's a good woman, and that's my son's mom, and that's probably what, what I would probably want to say.
Wow, yeah. If you've been able to be more honest with yourself and with her at that time, maybe things would have been different.
I know things would have been different. And I don't say that regretfully because she's gone on and she has a very happy life. But just thinking about, the things that she had to deal with when it came to me and all those things that I had to deal with. Yeah.
Hmm. Is there anything else you want to say, Ron?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share my story, and that as a foster kid, as a kid that's been adopted into an unfamiliar situation, these people have unconditional. Some of them have unconditional love for you, and you need to trust these environments, and you need to voice your opinions about how you feel, and you also need to voice those things that are happening to you that you don't feel comfortable with. You have more power than you think. And the way you use that power is you use your voice and you talk to people about things that are going on with you. If you feel like you're being violated, if you feel like you're being hurt, then you need to speak to someone. And I'm going to just go out on a limb and say this. The young girl I talked about, Carissa, she thought about suicide. And I told her suicide is not an option because there's way more things that you can do than take your life. Because although you feel that there's not an out, there is an out. You just got to hold on. You just got to hold on and get help.
So there is an out. Just hold on and get help.
Just hold on. There is an out. Get help. Yes.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you for that. Thanks for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ron, for sharing your story with us. As we've heard in so many stories on this podcast, it only takes one person who cares to make a difference and change a course in someone's life. You've certainly made a huge difference in your community by helping others find their way. That's an amazing gift, so thank you. Bonus Babies will be taking a 2-week end of summer break. We have many great guests coming, so stay tuned and join us when we return. Enjoy the next couple of weeks. Thank you for listening, and be well. If you see something, say something. If you suspect a child's health or safety is jeopardized in any way by parents or anyone else, contact the Child Protective Services Agency in your county. 24-hour hotlines are staffed by trained social workers who will help you through the process, and you can do so anonymously. In California, you can call the Child Protection Hotline at 800-540-4000. So if you see something, say something. You might be saving a child's life. If you want to know more about becoming a CASA anywhere in the country, go to nationalcasagal.org, and in LA, casala.org. And if you want to know more about becoming a foster parent, check out the National Foster Parent Association at nfponline.org. There's also faithfosterfamilies.org and adoptuskids.org. There's tons of other information online as well, so you can just hunt around. We also want to thank the supremely talented Christina Apostolopoulos for her beautiful original music. You can find her music on Spotify or Instagram at Christina Aposto. And also thank you to Yukon Har for his engineering. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear and you find it as valuable as we do, please rate us and hit subscribe. You can also make a donation at bonusbabies.org. See you next time.